Hey guys, my name is RyanCentral and welcome to HitScan. I have a few bits of news I suppose to cover in this video, stuff that we missed in the last video that we did, but also stuff that's come up fairly recently. We'll start with a bit of a PSA. Haven will not be available in competitive over the next probably couple of days, maybe even a week. VALORANT tweeted, "We were made aware of an exploit on Haven and disabled it in the competitive queue while we ship a fix overnight. It'll come back into rotation as soon as we're confident it's fixed, so yeah, probably over the next couple of days." The exploit, for those that didn't know, was that you can, as Reyna, dismiss and get under the plant site on C and plant the bomb there, which can't be defused. So obviously, pretty hefty exploit to have in for competitive. So Haven is out of the queue for now. But there's a few other bits of news like that, and I also want to talk about the pro scene and meta, and Hiko's complaints about said meta in a second. The first thing I wanted to talk about was skins. Gun skins are an exciting part of the game for sure. Every time there's a new patch, data miners tend to reveal what the new gun skins will look like, and it's really exciting for everybody involved. It's like Christmas almost. Usually it comes in with a patch and it's super exciting, and no doubt we're expecting more like this in the future, but one of these skins is actually being leaked by Riot, which is something that I wanted to highlight first and foremost. This is the Blast X collection, and this is a Phantom that looks like Buzz Lightyear. It's pretty amazing, and yes, this came from Riot. This came from one of their dev updates before, and if you're a keen eye in the English version of this picture was rather unsuspecting as it was blurred. But if you looked at the Russian version, this picture was not blurred at all, hence where the leak came from. But this is where we get down the rabbit hole. Now, some of these skins you may have heard of or seen of before. These aren't directly new, but I didn't really know about these up until I dug a little deeper, and I would expect the majority of our audience may not have seen them too much either. All of the skins, the ones that we've seen in the game now, the ones that we saw in a closed beta, and also all of the ones that were data mined are all in one place on valorant.fandom.com. I think Floxy was one of the people, the main data miners behind all this, and put this together, so shout out to him. His Twitter is yet again in the description below. But I wanted to go through some of these. Some of these you may have already seen before in other videos or on Twitter, for example. But it also does include some collections we haven't seen ever. Now, some of these we actually have pictures for, some of them we don't. The first set that's unreleased is the Asgardian collection, or the Drips collection, I think. We have the Operator, the Bulldog, and the Sheriff. We see some pretty nice images there, but there is also going to be an Asgardian Vandal, where there is no picture currently. The Imperium collection hasn't been released yet, but we know of it. We've seen these guns and the melee weapon from the closed beta. I really like the knife. It reminds me of Guan Yu from Dynasty Warriors, and the halberd weapon that he has there. In the originals, of course, the new ones are just too crazy for me. The toy collection, we've seen these guns, but it is also worth adding that there is going to be a toy melee, so I hope that's like a rubber hammer or something. The Ronin collection was in the closed beta, in case you didn't see that way back when. There's no new weapons part of that set. And of course the Reaver collection, which everybody's really looking forward to. No surprises there. I do think when it comes to some of the sets that we saw in the closed beta, namely the toy one, we could see some of the models of these guns updated a little bit. There was a bit of internal feedback on making them stand out a little bit more, and that is something that we've sort of spoken to Riot themselves about. So basically, with the stuff that we've been seeing so far, don't be surprised if they're a little bit different when they are officially launched into the game. Just more of a heads up than anything. Now, these next ones are sets and collections that have been data mined, that are brand new, but there are no images, so you're going to have to use your imagination, and that's quite easy with the first one, the Cyberpunk collection, which includes an Odin, a Frenzy, a Judge, a Bulldog, and a melee weapon. I can imagine that is going to look pretty sick, and hopefully, you know, lines up with the launch of Cyberpunk. Be a nice little cross-promotion thing going on there, I guess. The Dragon collection, which would include a Frenzy, a Vandal, an Operator, a Judge, and a melee weapon. I'm assuming all of these will have the cool effects that you have when you get the final kill against the enemy, as well as recolors, but you're going to have to use your imagination for now. The Edge collection, which includes a Phantom, a Sheriff, a Spectre, an Ares, and another melee weapon, and the Fallen collection. A Classic, a Spectre, a Marshal, and a Vandal. You then have the Mage Punk collection. I told you there's a lot, but there's no pictures unfortunately, which has a Bucky, a Ghost, a Spectre, and a melee. The Oni collection, which will have an Oni Phantom, which I'm just going to wait for regardless, and Assault Collection, which they've said is probably a placeholder, which is a Vandal. So there's quite a lot of details that the data miners have been able to find out. We haven't seen some of the skins just yet. Some of them we have, but the majority we haven't. So I guess it's just look at the names, maybe save up a bit of money and see which ones you might want to wait for. Certainly I know a lot of you guys will be interested in the Cyberpunk one, so just wait for those, I suppose. But that's not the only thing I wanted to talk about in this video. I actually wanted to ask you guys and pose a question to you about a particular thing, the operator. And it's something that Hiko actually brought up recently by saying that the operator is the strongest thing in the game and is kind of dictating how the game is played. Listen to this.
The game right now has a lack of utility. The game needs to have more ways to counter oppers, because right now, ops are way too powerful on the defense side. And like I'm saying, teams are double, sometimes even triple opping because it's literally impossible to push off all the angles. There's not enough flashes, there's not enough smokes, there's not enough utility. If you think about it, in this game, you have 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 flashes, and you have 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 smokes for the entire round. So the problem is there's not enough utility right now to counter oppers. So oppers right now are teeing off on teams.
Now, he's not wrong. When it comes to watching the pro scene, the operator play, and most certainly double operator play, tends to be very dominant in their playstyle. Of course, it's a big money gamble when you have to pick up these very heavy weapons, but it can be really difficult to shut them down. So I wondered what you guys thought, whether you agreed. Let me know in the comments below, because our games are obviously going to be very different to Hiko's unless you are part of that top 1%, where I imagine people are really good with the sniper rifle. Now this reminds me of Counter-Strike, where we would have games playing up against a team that were running like 4 operators, and it was really oppressive. But this is something that Pansy spoke about actually on the Do Not Peek podcast, where she mentioned how to counter multiple ops or operators, and says that people really aren't doing that in Valorant. So here's the clip.
Okay, we know the economy can facilitate a double AWP. We know they've got the money and the players that like to run it. Okay, how do we counter this? A full site execution. We all know the answer. We've played this game for years. We know that that's how you do it. Utility everywhere. Smother them out. Make them unable to use it. Force them into a retake where they can't come back in easily. But do they do that? No, they just kind of play the same default out-ish and then just kind of split around the map and then they get picked apart. I mean, I want to see the players have to get better, not just change the game to suit them.
Counter-Strike players, ironically, aren't playing Valorant with Counter-Strike utility. You know, all of these crazy smokes that you need to know if you play Counter-Strike, because there's no abilities that enable you to just pop them down like Brimstone does. So I think there's an air of laziness out of some of the people that have come from Counter-Strike to not really push the boat out when it comes to how utility can be used. I think the operator is strong, definitely. Does it deserve being nerfed for whatever reason or made more expensive? I think that's a wait and see. I'm not really having that much impact running into operator players, not yet at least. But if this is a problem that gets worse over time, then sure, Riot should definitely look into it and try and fix it. But I feel like this is a really important talking point. I don't want to make a video in like a month's time be like, operators are too strong, nobody knows what the hell they're doing. I would rather like post a question that Hiko's been putting out there with you guys and generally see what you think. If you all agree that the operator is a problem, then that's some decent feedback that we can give to the devs. But right now, I feel it's not really at that point yet. But I think there's some really interesting points in there. There was a clip as well of Hiko talking about the meta and that he feels that Omen Viper can take over the controller meta and make Brimstone a little bit more redundant, which is something that I guess is more wait and see, but I wanted to focus on what has happened recently. This came from the T1 Invitational event. These are all of the pick rates of the agents across the board. This was put together by Emily Rand from ESPN Esports that has been following the scene really closely and putting out a lot of content over there, as have all of the other ESPN guys, so shout out to them for sure. I'll also shout out their podcast because it's pretty decent, and I think listening to this and Do Not Peek have certainly enlightened me on a lot of stuff that's happening in the scene currently. This spreadsheet is all of the details on who played what and when, but I really want to focus on the total play rate across all of the groups and all of the tournament. And we could break them down one by one and highlight if things are looking good or bad for them. The agent with the highest pick rate was actually Cypher, being played 95% of the time, 146 games out of 154. It's understandable, nobody can really do what Cypher does and can be good on every site, on every map, on either side. Needs no introduction, I feel. Sage's pick rate is actually a little bit lower. Some teams are now starting to play in the pro scene without Sage, which sounds like suicide, but teams like Team Solo Mid, for breaking over in the EU scene are actually making it work quite well, and it might be something that we go into more detail some other time if you're interested. The second highest pick rate is still in the 90%, so she's been played an awful lot, but a lot less than the 100% pick rate that she's had in the past. Brimstone's down to 73%. Honestly, I thought this would be a lot lower, but Brimstone has set himself up nicely as a staple in the game, understandably why, but I think Omen and Viper could certainly contest him in the future as time goes on. Silver's pick rate was just below that at 71% pick rate. Again, quite surprising. I do understand why Silver's played a lot, but it seems that the NA team really do value him. And these 4 agents have the highest pick rate, and then it drops quite considerably when you get to Raze, who had a 40% pick rate. This is a lot higher in the EU scene. EU teams love playing Raze, and it seems to work out quite well, but in NA, it doesn't tend to really have the same results for whatever reason, so it's quite low for Raze, but still not too bad. You then have Omen, which is just below that at 38%. Really nice considering the changes came in. It seems that Omen's pick rate has really catapulted up, and he seems a really solid pick. And I can imagine this improving as time goes on. Just tends to be very map dependent. He's really good on Haven, he's really good on Split and Ascent. Vine's really the only map where you tend to want to always run a Brimstone. But I can see Omen's pick rate going up. Phoenix, 26%, honestly quite high for him. Players like Drone for TSM do like to play him an awful lot, and I don't really understand it all that well, but I understand it less considering that both Phoenix and Breach have the same amount of pick rate. Breach I would rate a lot higher. His ultimate and abilities tend to be better than Phoenix's, and a lot better at setting up your team, but I think it's interesting that it's going this way. I'm really excited to see what happens for both of these agents. Jet's pick rate is at 25%, decent. You know, the operator Jet role tends to be quite good, but it's not completely standout. But obviously, there's some really good players that know how to play Jet and play the operator, do a pretty good job there. Raider's got the second worst pick rate with 16%. Not surprising at all. She's a pub stomper, but in actual team play with coordination, I just don't think she's that good, in all honesty. All of the other agents have something more utility-wise to give than Reyna does, so it's no surprise that teams don't really like playing her. And Viper had a 1% pick rate, picked twice out of the 154 games. Not really too much to look at. The changes have just come in, so teams aren't really going to be experimenting with her. But I can imagine her pick rate going up to like 20 or even 30% by the time we get a new Ignition tournament, either in NA or EU. I think this is just a temporary thing, so I'm not too worried about it. If you want like a full breakdown, maybe the next time there's a patch we could go through this kind of thing again, but I just want to do something fairly quickly so people understand generally what agents are considered better over than others when it comes to pick rate, but that doesn't necessarily say everything anyway. All of these areas that we've spoken about, I would love to go into more detail at the moment, but I respect that you guys just want to see news as it happens. But I figured, you know, I'd lead in with some of the new information we have on the weapon skins, and then talk about the meta and the game, how it's been played in the pro scene towards the end. So if you're not interested in that, you don't need to watch. So for those that have stuck this long, I appreciate you. If there's any kind of content you want us to do, let us know in the comments below. But things are looking good. I'm really enjoying the state of Valorant at the moment, and I've been enjoying casting it in the EU scene. And if you're from Europe, support some of these teams, definitely learn about them. It'd be great to see them get signed, as EU organizations haven't really got all that involved at the moment, but hopefully that'll change very soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care. We'll see you next time.